This is Speak of the Devils on AZ Family Sports.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier TV show for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com. Brad, we might have to change that introduction.
We might.
Because it's not just the premier television show for Sun Devil football, but it's the premier television show for the Big 12 champion, college football playoff bound Sun Devil football. What a time to be alive. What a time to record a television show talking about the Devils.
Yeah, and that was some of the confetti that I picked up from AT&T Stadium in Dallas as the Sun Devils took care of business. They did not leave a doubt, Joe, about who was leaving that stadium, who was leaving Jerry's World with the Big 12 title. They manhandled Iowa State 45-19, claiming their conference crown in year one in the Big 12. But not only that, there's still bigger fish to fry here because that win punched their ticket to the college football playoff. And they did so in such a fashion that, man, they are not even going to have to play the first round. Sun Devils got a first round bye. We will next see them in action January 1st in the Peach Bowl.
So a lot has gone on in the last week or so. So throughout the episode here today, we're obviously going to recap that Big 12 championship victory for the Sun Devils. Talk a little about that the transfer portal, that window opened up this week. ASU and the rest of the Big 12 had honors recipients in the all-conference awards that were doled out last week. And, of course, we just got to talk about this playoff selection and what that means for Sun Devil football and looking ahead. Obviously, there are more games to be played here in this 2024, and we're going to tip into the 2025 season the next time ASU hits the football field. This miraculous, unfathomable, unbelievable, improbable season, impossible season, really. If you look back at what's happened the last couple of years, the show goes on. It's just an amazing run, and ASU is peaking at the right time, making short work of Iowa State 45-19. It was a little, touch and go early, not a lot of defense, looking like it was going to be a high scoring affair. But ASU really pulled the plug on that kind of in the second quarter, and it was off to the races. A 35-point run that the Devils went on really blew this thing out of hand, especially in the early part of the third quarter.
Yeah, ASU really got after it. And as Kenny has been talking about all season long, especially as of late, ASU needs to do better finishing games. We've seen games recently that ASU got big leads and let the opponent get back in. Not so lately over the last couple of weeks. They have really taken to the twist the knife mentality. You mentioned ASU was able to get a lead at the half, but that early third quarter stretch where the Sun Devil defense went to work. They were a little shaky early, as you mentioned. Iowa State had some success early, but man, the Sun Devil defense put the clamps down on the Cyclones, allowing just 54 yards on 5 drives from the late first half through the rest of the time when the game was competitive. 3 consecutive drives ending in Sun Devil turnovers by the Sun Devil defense. All of those were punching the end zone by ASU's offense.
Yeah, that sequence in the third quarter was something that had ASU fans feeling like they're on a different planet, and I count myself among that group. It's like, how can this keep happening? But in a very positive way. But it all started with number 4, the man himself, Cam Scadaboo, from the very beginning of the game, asserting his will, and he had to do it that way because, of course, ASU was out without star wide receiver Jordan Tyson for that ball game against Iowa State, as we talked about last week, ranked 3rd in the country in pass defense. They didn't quite look like the 3rd best pass defense in the country, and a lot of that had to do, number 1, of course, with players stepping up in Tyson's absence at wide receiver. But when you have Cam Scadaboo doing what he can do, the bulldozing runs that he had on multiple occasions last Saturday in the state of Texas just showed you what kind of guy he is, what kind of athlete he is, what kind of competitor he is, that when things are at the grandest stage, when the most is on the line, and when your team's a little disadvantaged in terms of player personnel, it's time to draw a line in the sand and step right up, and that's exactly what Scat did.
The season's not over. I think we'll maybe run out of adjectives to describe. I mean, he was just untackleable. 208 total yards in the game. Another 3 touchdown tally. We'll get to. He's putting his name all over the Sun Devil record book with his performance. Just amazing run after amazing run, breaking 2, 3, 4 tackles. huge runs. First play of the game, 28 yards. That really set the tone. And there was just no way that he was not going to be leaving that stadium without the WWE belt as the game's most valuable player and his team getting the win.
But in selfless fashion, he had his teammates sign it, especially his offensive line. And then after they flew back to Phoenix, you saw Scadaboo and the entire Sun Devil team, or at least a lot of the players, walking out onto Mountain America Stadium Field, there, Frank Cush Field, rather, in the midst of a high school playoff game at halftime, and just a rousing ovation from the fans there. You just showed how big that was, that the Big 12 championship and playoff appearance is to this community by having that be what they do first. It shows how connected to this community Sun Devil football is. But as huge of a game as Scat had, not the only one. Sam Levitt, 219 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Also ran for a touchdown. He completed 12 of 17 passes. Melquan Stovall, Xavier Guillory, Malik McClain, these guys stepping up at wide receiver in the absence of Jordan Tyson. It was just a complete, dominating win on pretty much in all facets for Arizona State.
Yeah, the defense really got after it. As mentioned, the 3 consecutive drives ending in turnovers that really just put the game away for the Devils. Even the special teams unit, something that we've talked about as a concern all season long. Carson Kiefer thrust into the role as the team's place kicker, made a field goal. Hey, we'll take it at this point in the season. But yeah, just a dominating win and really a complete game for the Devils all around.
Yeah, and we haven't seen anything like that in a very long time as far as that complete nature of a win, especially in these high-stakes circumstances. ASU hasn't been in a conference championship game since 2013, so these types of opportunities don't come around that often. So you love to see ASU making the absolute most of it, as they did last Saturday.
All right, so with the Sun Devils capping off a great year, a lot of them got some individual awards. After the break, we'll break down. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, of course, with ASU having so much success, and their success might be even greater stuff laying ahead, a lot of Sun Devil individuals received some noteworthy recognition from the conference and from various outlets. But Joe, I think right now we got to start off. Is probably the biggest omission. Cam Scadaboo is not going to New York City as a Heisman Trophy finalist. What the heck?
Ridiculous. And that was announced earlier this week. All the players that were invited, obviously top tier players, Gene T from Boise State, Hunter from Colorado, Cam Ward from Miami, and Gabriel from Oregon, all, top tier players, incredible elite players. But Scadaboo is in that group as well, especially with what he's been doing lately on a national scale. He's the people's champion, and maybe it motivates him. So if that ends up helping ASU, that's a big deal. But he's easily the forever Heisman winner in the eyes of Sun Devil fans.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that, especially as he's come on in the last several weeks. But, maybe it was just a situation where you come in a little low in terms of just under the radar as the Sun Devils were, and it took an awful lot for him to get even kind of on the national consciousness. But I think one benefit is maybe ASU now finishing the season on such a high note as they're going to, is that next year's candidacy for Sam Levitt can get off to a running start.
There you go. You get that PR train working right now. He's a guy that, again, completely expected to come back. You never say never with anything in this transfer portal era, but you feel very good about that if you're Arizona State. So as we shift 24 to 25, maybe there will be some opportunities for ASU to promote some of its players at a higher level.
However, Scat was awarded a spot on the All Big 12 first team, along with 3 teammates, defensive back Xavier Alford, offensive lineman Lee Fatanu, and wide receiver Jordan Tyson on the second team, quarterback Sam Levitt, tight end Shimon Mateer, defensive lineman CJ Fight, and linebacker Keyshawn Elliott. 8 total on the first and second team. That is such a reversal from the last couple of years. It's remarkable to see.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. When you're winning games, you're going to get your name mentioned in these sort of lists, and each and every one of them deserves it. Just kind of going through those. Obviously, we talked about Scat. Jordan Tyson, the run that he was on before he suffered his injury, just incredible stuff. Among the best receivers in college football, especially in like the month of November. Very well-deserved first team honor for him there in the Big 12. Lee Fatanu, he was the best offensive lineman on the team last year, one of the few that got, some sort of recognition last year. Just to follow that up with a first-team pick, I mean, that's a guy that's really shown not only his ability to play, but also his leadership. You see him a lot being a vocal leader for this team, not just the offensive line or even just the offense. Xavier Alford, it's great to see his story. I'm not saying have a happy ending, but just to have happiness to it. just very unrightfully was forced to sit out last year because of some bogus transfer rules that the NCAA shortly thereafter abandoned. So it's good to see him get some retribution there. You move on to the second team, Sam Levitt. There are a lot of good quarterbacks in this league. Sam Levitt is a redshirt freshman, being able to get the second team all-conference honor there. That's a very, very big deal. And then CJ Fight, incredible improvement from year 1 to year 2, true freshman to sophomore year. Keyshawn Elliott being very impressive after transferring to ASU from New Mexico State. So again, just all the names that are involved here. Very happy to see them, not only to get this sort of recognition, but it's showing that the efforts, of course, in terms of recruiting transfers, and coaching up the players is paying off for Arizona State. We know that because they're the conference champions. We know that because they're a playoff participant now. This is just another reason to remind us.
Now, 3 guys did take home honorable mention: the offensive lineman Ben Coleman and safety Miles Ghost Rouser. Those 2 guys will be returning next season. And also Caleb McCullough, the veteran linebacker, cool way to cap his career as a guy who's seen a lot during his time coming over, of course, during the prior era. Some of the big individual category awards. There really could have been nobody else to take home the Big 12 Coach of the Year, Joe, than Kenny Dillingham.
Yeah, that one was very well deserved. I was a little concerned that they might do like a co-situation because, of course, there were a lot of teams in the Big 12 that improved dramatically from 2023 to this season, but no one else that was really on that list made it to the conference championship game, so Kenny certainly deserved that honor all by himself.
Offensive newcomer of the year in the Big 12, wide receiver Jordan Tyson. And as you pointed out on our full podcast episode, available everywhere you get your podcast, it's kind of almost a nice synergy there because the defensive newcomer was former Sun Devil BJ Green. So perhaps, one of those situations where both teams benefit there. But Jordan Tyson, as you mentioned, a scorching finish to the year prior to his unfortunate injury, and just what his future with Sam Levitt. Man, it's going to be real exciting to see.
Yeah, he's someone that just became just an incredible receiver, a very well-polished receiver. I thought that he was just a downfield guy. But how many catches did we see over the course of the season that looked like something N'Keal Harry would do? So just a very complete performer. It's very, very unfortunate that he is currently injured, but someone, again, with a tremendously bright future at Arizona State and beyond.
And the other end of that passing duo, Sam Levitt, was named the Offensive Freshman of the Year in the Big 12. And man, just to see his growth over the last, 8-9 weeks or so, basically everything from the road loss at Texas Tech, where really I think that was the only time we've seen real freshman moments. He's been displaying that poise that has really earned him a lot of the Jake Plummer comparisons. His scrambling ability certainly helps in that regard as well. But man, the future is bright for Sam Levitt, and folks, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and so he's the only true redshirt freshman to be listed on either the first or the second team all-conference for the Big 12, so it makes sense that he got the accolade that he did. Yeah, he improved dramatically week over week and is just playing some incredible ball right now.
All right, as we close out here real quick, some snubs. I think, obviously, Cam Scadaboo should have been the Offensive Player of the Year in the conference. Both Joe and I had some thoughts on social media that earned us a little blowback from a certain fan base up north. But, man, Shamari Simmons, he's had an excellent season. He's an all-conference player in my book.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'd throw maybe like a Keith Abney on that list. I think Simmons certainly deserves some honors. I think Abney had a very good season, maybe an honorable mention pick right there. But for ASU being as successful as they've been, you're not going to have a lot of snubs, but there definitely were a few there. Maybe that adds a little bit extra chip on the shoulder for this underdog type of team. Maybe that helps them in the college football playoff.
11 all-conference players, several individual awards. Man, it is just a good time to be around this Sun Devil football program. After the break, let's talk some portal. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, let's talk transfer portal. It's a fact of life in college football. It's how ASU built this championship team. I believe all 11 offensive starters, and depending on your definition, 9 to 10 defensive starters, all transfers. The Sun Devils.
Something, it's like a blessing and a curse. I know a lot of people have kind of lumped the transfer portal and NIL in as like ruining college sports, but the reality of the situation is ASU would not be anywhere near the success. I'm not like conference championship, college football playoff. I'm talking about like getting back to like 500. I don't think they would even really have a chance without the transfer portal. So thank you for the transfer portal is what I'm going to actually say right now. And because I'm changing my tune on a lot of things. I was looking at some old tweets and talking about how I really didn't like the 12-team playoff format. I thought that gave too many people opportunities. Yeah, changing my tune. Let's go.
So the Devils, of course, have benefited a lot, and this is a landscape where you can the fortunes can rise and the fortunes can fall, as we've seen to the rivals down south, as they're having a mass exodus of players. Now, earlier this week, on Monday, December 9th, the transfer portal officially opened, and it will close on December 28th in this window. Now, this is just for players hopping in. They don't have to find their new destination. They have to be in by the 28th. Now, every program in the country is going to have some sort of roster churn. Even this was a fact of life even before the transfer portal was a thing. For the Sun Devils earlier this week, they had a handful of players. Now, there's only about 3 of them that were kind of in that too deep, kind of impactful. Now, one cool thing is that Kenny on Monday afternoon said that they've had these discussions, and one of the hallmarks of this program is the transparency in which he interacts with these players. And so, a lot of times the staffs will say, "Hey, we just don't see you fitting in here. Let's do everything we can to help find you a good fit for you." But of course, the team's on a playoff run, Joe. So there's a couple contributors. He said that he's with some of these guys that he wants them to enter into the portal now so they can get that ball rolling. They don't fall behind in terms of finding their next home, but they're also able to continue to ride out this run with the playoffs, through the Peach Bowl and perhaps beyond.
Yeah, I think that maybe sometimes fans have the thought that if a player announces his intentions to transfer, that means that he hates the school, he hates the program, he hates the coach, he hates all the fans and their entire bloodline and all this stuff. Like, there's this bad blood. In the vast majority of cases, it's simply a business decision, and that's what we've seen a lot from ASU, at least the names that have entered the portal. A lot of guys that were either backups or deep reserves that just simply weren't going to get a lot of playing time. So if you're a college athlete, you want to go where you're going to play. ASU obviously has improved dramatically over the last couple of years, so it's just more difficult to find playing time. So again, that doesn't mean there's animosity or bad blood. It's just a business decision, but that business decision can maybe be somewhat put on hold for a little bit while you can find a way to help your current team. Because some of these guys, again, they're reserves. They might be special team players or backups that still play in games and can still serve a purpose. And just as they've done throughout the year, contributing, even if it's in a small way, to what ASU's done so far, they can continue to do that, and then they can find a new home and maybe have extended playing time there.
Yeah, so 2 guys that have publicly said or been told by Kenny Dillingham they're going to stick around the program and they're going to try to help out ASU get some more wins. Tight end Marquiston Douglas, Kenny said that in a tweet, "Can't wait to finish this thing out and then find you a spot closer to home from being Tallahassee, Florida, to Arizona to." Open-ended. And also safety Kamari Wilson has been a backup all year. He's sticking around too.
Yeah, ironically from Florida. Yeah, Marquiston Douglas came in with some interesting attributes about him, but he only caught 1 pass for 3 yards. Kamari Wilson was just behind some very talented safeties, many of which are going to come back. So he's someone that was a big-time high school recruit, played a lot for Florida early in his career, just needs another opportunity somewhere. So again, this doesn't necessarily take a great deal away from Arizona State. Can help free up some spots, maybe go a different direction, and give these guys an opportunity to find a place where they can get more playing time.
Kenny also said they'll of course be shopping, but not to the level of pulling in so many. They're now that you're a winning team, they can be a little bit more selective. Offensive line, running back, corner, perhaps even safety are some areas they could go shopping.
And we've already heard reports about how there are players out there in the portal that are very excited to communicate with Arizona State. This is not something where they have to be talked into it and sold on it because of poor performance. This is a team that players want to play for now.
Yeah, a lot can change in 1 year. Time comes at you fast. So we will definitely be tracking the comings and goings from the transfer portal in the weeks ahead. But after the break, let's take a step back and really appreciate what's happening with Sun Devil football.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Brett, in the last month or so, but really all season, we really haven't had a chance. And when I say we, I mean followers of Sun Devil football, to really just pause and see the forest for the trees, especially in this recent run. I think the reason for that is because ASU has been in these no margin for error situations on several consecutive weeks. Hey, if you lose to BYU, you probably don't make the conference championship game. If you lose to Arizona, you might not do that, or you're not going to have much hopes of the college football playoff. If you don't beat Iowa State, you don't get the conference title, you don't get in the playoff. All these things that are just must-win situations. So now that we've got a few weeks before the next ball game, we can kind of take a step back, really just bask in what's been happening in this 2024 season. Of course, you all know by now the details of what is to come for Arizona State. They're the Big 12 champions. By virtue of doing that, they're in the college football playoff. By a little bit of luck over the course of last weekend, they have a bye. They're not going to be playing at the Fiesta Bowl. They'll be playing at the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia, against the winner of Texas and Clemson. But that's a pretty good draw. So we're feeling pretty good about where things are, to say the very least. So it's unreal. It's unbelievable what ASU is doing at 11-2. You can count on one hand the amount of times ASU has won 11 games in a football season. They've only won 12 on one occasion. That's 1975. As I'm sure you know by now, haven't won a conference championship since 1996, or at least up until this past Saturday, that was the case. So these are incredible feats in any circumstance, but to happen on the heels of what occurred here the last 2 years of life, it's just absolutely remarkable. And I think it's a product of having a deep passion for what you're doing, where you're doing it. That's what we're seeing really come to the surface with Sun Devil football right now.
It's just it shows the power of good leadership. We saw how the program and really kind of Sun Devil athletics as a whole regressed and atrophied over the last few years, and the leadership wasn't committed to where college athletics was going. But then you fast forward 1 year from when Graham Rossini took over as athletic director, and Kenny Dillingham was already in place. But now all of a sudden, you have the university and program and department leadership giving the necessary resources to these programs, to these coaches that are so bought in. Graham Rossini is a Sun Devil. Kenny Dillingham is a Sun Devil. You have these people that are bought in, and you give them the tools and the ingredients that they need, and all of a sudden they're whipping up something nice.
And this could be something that isn't just a 1 year flash of the pan. Now, It's interesting because both ASU and Arizona are tales at different ends of the spectrum of what can be possible in college athletics. With the University of Arizona, they won 10 games last year, looked great doing it, had high expectations. They had playoff expectations for this year. It shows what a late coaching change can happen, and they went on and won 4 games, and they're looking like they're not going to be successful anytime soon. ASU, 3 wins last year, very low expectations. We already know that they were picked last in the conference in the preseason poll. Here they are, Big 12 champions, playoff participant. You get the right combination together, magic can happen.
And what's really interesting is this was the come-up year. This wasn't the contention year. That was 25, maybe 26. And we've mentioned it so many times that we thought maybe if things go right, this team can get to 500, get to a bowl game. But they've so far surpassed all those expectations we had. They've checked not only the box we wanted to see this year, but on to the next page of 2025 in terms of this is a program that is so far ahead of schedule. Now, as we talked about, in the era of the portal, that can be taken away pretty quick. But you look at the leadership that's in place, the efforts, the moves, the buy-in, the culture, everything right there in its totality says this is a program that is here to stay.
And I think there's a good balance that Sun Devil fans need to have as far as living in the moment and enjoying things where they are. But you can also feel that this program, this athletic department, is on very, very good footing for the future. Now, are they going to go be a playoff team every single year? Be a lot cooler if they did, but we don't know that we can have those sort of great things in our lives. But just the standards and the way that football is played, ASU is playing as confident as I've ever seen them, quite frankly. Just a great time to be involved with this Sun Devil community.
As a wise man once said, winning is good. Let's enjoy it, folks. Joe and I will be back next week as we take a little bit deeper dive into ASU's roster construction.